Welcome back to the LEC Spring Split. Vitality and Misfits Gaming have some of the biggest stars in EU on their respective lineups, but for this game, one is missing. We will talk about that in just a minute, but first, let's start with Misfits. This is a team that is fighting to make it to playoffs. Last weekend, they went 2-0. The Moose was back, and Ender, you were talking about how the drafts Hussein brought to the team really helped them pick up those wins.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were a team that needed confidence building, right? And Moose comes in and gives them 2 drafts that are very easy to execute on. First up, we had this very heavy team fight wombo combo you're seeing here on the left, and then the other one was just protect Hans Sama and allow that man to step up and carry.
Yeah, for me what was really cool was the fact of where the power points were. You saw kind of like the potential that Misfits Gaming have and the versatility of the roster, because the first one is all about sOAZ and Febiven, you know, the Aurelia, the Jarvan, and you really saw sOAZ pop off in that matchup, whereas the second one, it went back to the tried and true of Hans Sama and Ivern just camping for the lane.
Playing through bot lane, playing through Hans Sama, the Misfits of Spring 2019. But you talked about them playing through other lanes. Do you start to believe it, Frosk? Because Hans Sama is the man, the myth, the legend for Misfits.
It's about consistency. So we know that Misfits can play through Hans Sama. I had some questions, you know, as we moved on to more crit ADCs. He seemed like he was more comfortable in kind of some of these, the Ezreal, the Lucian picks, the Draven picks like that. All still viable, but I didn't see that big pop-off performance on the things like the Kai'Sa and most recently. Looks great, but if you have sOAZ in the back pocket, use him.
Yeah, I mean, also, this is a guy that played 1 mage all year last year when you were seeing so many mages in the bottom lane. I think Moose just sort of came and was like, look, man, you're going to play some mages for us. We're going to let you experiment a bit. And it was an experiment that actually went pretty well for them.
Well, now we get to see. The experiment last weekend does a transition to consistency this weekend. But before we talk about the matchup at hand, their opponent's Vitality, they have been permitted to use an emergency substitute for this game, with Saken coming in for Jizuke due to illness. For more insight, here's Laure with YamatoCannon.
Thank you very much, guys, and thank you, Yamato, for joining me ahead of your game. Now, we know that Saken is going to play instead of Jizuke today. Most of people may not know him. He's playing in the French League, in the second team of Vitality. How is it going with him this week, with the training? Is he ready to go on stage today?
I think for sure he's ready. I think it's a very difficult situation to be in. I remember myself when I was a player and I subbed in for example, Gambit back in Season 2. It's quite a different experience because you're in a new dynamic altogether and you need to kind of adapt yourself, but I am truly impressed by how well Saken has handled it.
What kinds of words of wisdom have you been able to say to him, knowing this experience?
So I told him about the story of my first game on the LCS stage, and I remember that it just flew by. And I told him that my main regret from that game was that I didn't enjoy the moment in the moment. So I told him just to enjoy himself. This is his dream, to play on the big stage. So he should smile and enjoy it.
And I hope he'll have the confidence to do so. Now, how do you think it will change the whole team dynamic? Because Jizuke was a central point in Vitality. How is it going to be different with Saken?
It's going to be a bit different. We've made some adjustments to accommodate Saken and make sure that he's as comfortable as possible. Of course, Jizuke, his health is the #1 priority, and I wouldn't care if, you know, for anyone's health, any player's health, I would sacrifice the whole season for it, because that comes first. And anything that comes, we will adjust to it. I've told my players already that you can wait for the perfect moment, or you take the moments you get and you make them perfect, and my boys are ready.
So you will take down Misfits today, I imagine.
For sure we will.
Thank you for your insights, and back to you guys in the studio.
I feel like anytime I see Yamato, like, I just get full behind this guy. It doesn't matter what he's saying. I'm like, Misfits are really going to win this game. And then Yamato gives a speech. I'm like, Vitality are going to win this game.
It doesn't matter what happens with YamatoCannon. He has a future career in public speaking, emotional speaking, in confidence building. Listen, let's focus on the matchup, though, because Saken, he does play for Vitality B in the LFL. How does this change Vitality's game plan as we're seeing some of his plays from the league, Froskurinn?
I mean, frankly, I feel like everyone coming in here was all aboard the Vitality train, and then as soon as we saw that there was a substitution, everyone pulled out of it and jumped onto the Misfits train. And it's because Jizuke is such a core, pivotal member of the team. So while we don't really know what this guy's ceiling is going to be in the LEC, it is completely different levels of competition. You know, Yamato just said, smile while you're here, enjoy it. This has been your dream.
Yeah.
And I hope that we do see that smile. This is still, I think, a very uphill battle for Vitality, because they don't strike me as the most flexible team. They have one style, one way, and to see them completely change that to cater to a new player coming in, I think is Oh, pretty risky.
Alternatively, if this player coming in is kind of like Mowgli and just fits the style and fits the player, can work. Let's talk about that style a little bit. Vitality, they sack the bottom lane. They play around mid and top. Cabochard is one of the unsung heroes of the split.
Yeah, I mean, Cabochard is absolutely crushing it up in the top lane. I think a lot of it comes from where Mowgli is on the map. He definitely plays for this guy. I mean, he knows he's the talk of the town. The stats back him up. I mean, he's got it on. That beard is fantastic.
So he had Urgot, now he's got sunglasses.
We don't have a huge amount of time left, but in terms of the matchup, obviously this is Misfits favored with a substitution coming in. But where else are we going to looking at the game to determine who's going to come out victorious?
For me, it actually starts with Cabochard in the top lane. We've seen a lot of the Jace bans, and with Urgot falling off, not only is Cabochard kind of one of the big Urgot proponents, but he was also one of the guys that knew he had the confidence to take the Jace. I expect it will be banned, but if he gets a hold of it, I want to see Cabochard run away with either picks like Jace or really make full use of the Conqueror and all the different types of champions that we can see with it.
Yeah, and that's where the question sort of comes up. What's more important, top lane or bottom lane? Because we know Misfits want to play through Hansama. That's how they found the majority of their success in the past. So what I've seen so far in this patch is that I don't think the top lane changes have been as impactful. I don't think that's going to push Vitality over the edge with a substitute coming in. And I think Misfits should have the edge here with Hansama in the bot lane.
Well, let's see if Misfits can deliver. They have let people down in the past, but they went 2-0 last weekend, and it's that consistency that we need to see from them. We'll see what Saken and Vitality can do as they'll be tested to the limit by a Misfits that appears to be on form.
Ready? Time! Let's go, League of Legends!
We're here for some fantastic League of Legends today. We have Misfits versus Vitality.
Before we get into that,
Yes.
what was that?
That was the fusion dance.
What is the fusion dance?
It's the fusion between two superior beings to become an even greater being.
So you're saying that we're now a greater being?
No, because we actually failed the fusion.
Ah, what happens when you fail?
Well, this happens. We're two separate people.
It's a shame. That's
is
a
a
shame.
shame.
I
Think
think a
about how
medic
strong-
Vedius combo.
We would just be Vedius then, though.
Yeah,
The great doctor.
exactly. The truly superior being.
Anyway, Misfits versus Vitality. It's going to be a tough game for Vitality today, given that they are running with a substitute. It is unfortunate. We do hope that Jizuke gets back on form, but he was also one of the key players in how this team found so much success. And if we look back to the last time that these two teams actually played up against each other, he was a large part of where the early game leads came from.
Yeah, definitely. It was the LeBlanc into Galio matchup in the mid lane. We actually saw Febiven teleport away from the lane really early, and Jizuke used that time to get a CS lead and to be able to snowball the game away. Alongside that, you had Attila on Draven, who had a great performance.
Yeah, he certainly did. And it's one of those things where when you look at Vitality, we heard him talk about it on the podcast, which is very much that he is often the sacrificial lamb, the man that doesn't really get that many resources, and instead they focus on playing around their mid and top. But when they played against Misfits, they locked in the Draven, they played it into the Lucian, and this seems to be the strategy that Vitality go for, which is we just want to ensure a winning 2v2 towards the bot side of the map, because we believe that if Misfits can't get ahead in the bot side of the map, then they just cannot win the game.
And that's where we saw Misfits focus last week. When Moose came back, they went 2-0 against Origin. They played the Kai'Sa composition. You had a lot of strength going through that bottom lane. And what I would like to see from Misfits is more of the same. Like, play through bot. It's what's winning you games at the moment. You want to make that playoff run, you need to be putting pressure into Hansama.
Well, what I thought was pretty cool was based on their games last week, they weren't relying on early game leads to actually win the game.
Yep.
They actually had their longest games of the split so far, and they were still able to convert it into victories, which I think is really good for them. Their late game team fighting was really good. One of the big issues that I had with Misfits last week was they seemed to have an over-reliance on Baron. It felt like they refused to really push once they had a big lead unless they had that objective. And so something I'm going to be tracking in this game is, are they still very reliant on that Baron buff, or have they found other ways to exert their pressure rather than just rely on that big objective?
And we'll keep our eyes on that. Of course, we're on patch 9.4 as well with the Conqueror changes. Maybe we'll see Rek'Sai this game. I've heard a lot of talk, especially in solo queue and in higher elo, about how strong she can be. And we've seen Maxlore, play Rek'Sai in the past, so maybe he'll go back to one of his comfort champions.
It actually used to be one of his OG picks. Yeah. When I used to play against him back in the UK scene, the three champions you always had to respect from him was his Lee Sin, his Rengar, and his Rek'Sai. And I feel like this is a champion that he is very, very comfortable on. He is known to be an early game jungler, and I think that it fits into his style very, very comfortably. So I'm quite excited to see if Maxlore goes for it, and if it's something that they'll look to prioritize.
Well, we are just waiting to get on into picks and bans, where we should be in just a second, and we'll get things underway. Very much looking forward to this game, I have to admit. I think Vitality Misfits, obviously it's lost a little bit of its impetus, a little bit of its punch from losing Jizuke, but I've watched Saken in the EU Masters last year when he played on Gen's side. They went 3-0 in their group. They only lost to Mad Lions, who ended up winning the whole thing. And he's been playing a bit of Sylas mid as well. We've already seen how effective that can be today. I hope to see Saken have a good performance on his first LEC stage game.
Curious as to what kind of a performance, what kind of play style he'll look to bring to the team. Going up against Febiven, who has had a really good week 6. He looked very confident on both his Orianna and his Aurelia. Breeds good news for the side of Misfits fans. And definitely going up against a veteran player in the form of Febiven for your very first game could always be rather taxing. But I'm curious as to whether or not they put him on a control mage. Will they put him onto an assassin? Will they try to get him a counter pick? Or will Vitality just focus on getting Cabochard a winning lane and bot lane a winning matchup, and then just kind of leave Saken to fend for himself and hold on to his own?
I mean, in the EU Masters, played a lot of Corki, we've seen a few Corki games recently. It's a very safe mid laner. You can still have a lot of effect on the game later on as well. Don't really have to do too much. And I like the idea of putting your eggs up towards Cabochard in that top lane, down towards Attila in that bottom lane as well. So we'll see. You know, there's draft options for Yamato, but having a sub come in on the day is always a little bit of a tricky one to deal with.
One of the other things that I noticed last week about these two teams, starting off with Misfits, is that they do sometimes seem to get caught in the chaos, which is, I decided, ultimately a better thing for this team, because one of the issues that they had when they went for more of the scaling comps was that they wouldn't do anything. Whereas last week I felt like that they would take a lot of skirmishes or fights that they weren't really properly set up for, and they would either go even or maybe come out a little bit ahead.
Okay.
But it's a nice thing to see if you're a Misfits fan, because they're actually doing things, right? And even if the setup isn't optimal, the idea behind let's try and make this play rather than let's wait for the perfect play is something that you kind of need if you want to be challenging top teams like Vitality and like G2.
But the problem with getting caught in the chaos, especially against a team like Vitality, is Vitality historically thrive in the chaos, right? They'll take skirmish after skirmish against you, and they'll take that, 50-50 play because they think they're just better players.
And that's why, coming into the day, Vitality were my favorites in this matchup, but then they lost Jizuke, one of the core playmakers in those kind of scenarios that turn them heavily in your favor. And with him gone, I don't know if Saken can fulfill that same responsibility and can adapt on the fly in the same way that Vitality have been able to do so many times in the past. So we shall see how things get on. Still waiting for an update. In fact, we do have 1 minute.
Yeah, it's a technical issue connecting to the lobby. So as soon as that gets rectified, we'll be on into the game. And of course, you need all the players in the lobby. We don't want to have a 3-minute remake on our hands. Someone doesn't connect to your game.
You can't really play League of Legends without all 10 players.
I'll be honest, as a support, if my AD carry doesn't connect, I just dislike League of Legends for 3 minutes, right?
Really?
Like you're standing there, you don't get any gold because the Frostfang changes and because the Nomad's medallion changes. You're kind of trying to CS, but I'm playing Rakan, and it's like you're chucking feathers at minions and they don't really do that much damage.
Medic. Playing actual support champions.
I should play Lux.
You should play Lux. You should play LeBlanc. I've heard Nocturne is a really good support champion. And if your AD carry doesn't connect...
What support matchups are Nocturne good into?
All of them.
Oh, okay.
I think his only weak matchup is Akali support, really. Really difficult matchup. Hate that one.
It's because of the stealth, right?
No, it's because she's just really good into melee matchups.
Oh, okay.
So it's a real pain to deal with. But everything else he's really good into. And if anything, it gets really obnoxious. The best way to play it is actually you have your AD carry take the Frostfang, and then you get all the farm, and then they just passively generate gold.
That makes sense.
Do you know what I mean?
You do Klepto Frostfang, so Ezreal, and then the Nocturne just takes all the farm, right?
Yes,
that makes a lot of sense.
And then when the Ezreal's completed his item, he can then leave to wards,
yeah.
And then you can
and he's got extra wards from his Klepto as well,
yes,
right? So
exactly. See, now you get it.
It just makes a lot of sense.
Right? See, so that way, if your AD carry disconnects, it's only a benefit. But in any case, there will be no disconnecting in this game.
No.
Hopefully, that's what we're trying to resolve right now. And so we get a little funky when we're filling the time.
Okay, here, I'm going to unfunkify us for a second.
Unfunkify us. Good start.
We have 9.4, right? We've already seen a couple of drafts on 9.4. We've seen a first pick, Sylas.
Yes.
We've seen, Excel, just go for what I'd count as a more conventional sort of team composition.
Sure.
Between these two teams, what do you think are draft priorities? Who's looking for what in this draft?
Well, I think for me, Jarvan is something that can be really important for both these teams because both Cabochard and sOAZ prioritized it pretty heavily last week. It's also a jungler that Mowgli's been playing a lot over the last few weeks, and I think it's something that Maxlore is very capable of playing as well. So having that kind of versatility and flexibility in the draft, I think, is really important. I also think things like the Alistair will be really important for the side of Gorilla. It's something that he's his most played support throughout the regular season. And I think he's a large part of where their engages come from in the mid game as well. So I think those are a couple of really crucial picks that I think we should see in this draft.
We'll have to see if the analysts agree with you, because while we wait for the teams to get ready, we are going to head back to Quickshot and the boys.
Hello? Hello?
Oh, I'm so sorry. That
Listen,
was an
Vedius.
accident. It was a slip of the tongue. Of course, I'm joined here by ladies and gentlemen. Listen, there is a small technical issue on stage, so while we're working through it, we do get a couple more minutes to talk about the matchup. And Ender, something that we rushed through in the pregame was just how Vitality tend to sack the bottom lane and play around the other lanes. Give me a little bit more context on what you mean by that and what Vitality do that you like.
Yeah, so I think there's an interesting sort of philosophy in League of Legends, right? Where your jungler can only spend so much time around the map in all these different areas, right? So usually you see teams that will focus either bottom lane or top lane with their junglers, and that's the lane that sort of gets the pressure, gets the ability to sort of push in and impact the rest of the map. And what Vitality do is they play around Cabochard because they know he wants to go head-to-head in the matchup, and Mowgli will play for the top side, which means bottom lane doesn't get the attention it needs in order to take the aggressive 2v2s that we see a lot.
And the 2 points there is I think it's a byproduct first and foremost of the champions that Cabo is playing up there. Again, we talked about the Urgot and the Jace. These are both champions that demand a lot of resources because they're going to be really far forward in the lane. So they need to have that security of having the jungler there and having the ability to look for the 2v2. Now, that said, I think that while Vitality are very much about their solo laners in Jizuke and Cabochard, of course Jizuke not playing today, I actually think that they play almost entirely around their jungler, because it's not so much about Mowgli just ganking the lanes repeatedly, it's about Mowgli blitzing into the enemy jungle and then making use of the fact that Cabo and Jizuke constantly have priority in their lanes.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk League of Legends philosophy, there's another debate. Do you play for your lanes or do you play for your jungler? And I think historically we've seen a lot of teams that have their jungler play and look to gank their lanes, whereas Vitality, if you remember Kikis last year, now with Mowgli as well, their junglers want to invade, which means you need pushing lanes to back up that aggressive play, and that's where we see Vitality really go hard.
And the two different regions that kind of really exemplify this style is the LCK, which play really about their junglers, and the LPL, which play almost primarily around their laners. If you think about a team like Invictus Gaming, that's just Ning constantly ganking Rookie's lane, whereas if you think about the likes of Score when he's on his high, that's using priority, taking these small paper-cut advantages and turning them into something bigger.
Now, isn't this also a difference between Misfits and Vitality, where the description
exactly
you just
Quickshot
is how Misfits use Maxlore to play around Hansama almost all of the time, but last week Saturday we saw a Febiven on that Aurelia have a performance that honestly is one of the standouts of the split. So, you know, stylistically, does this give the advantage to Vitality, assuming that Saken steps up and can step into Jizuke's shoes, you know, and play at a similar level?
Yeah, so I mean, I think in a theoretical world where you take the small advantages every time, you never take a huge risk, like you're always playing to your pressure, that should in fact win out. But there's a certain explosive factor when you see Misfits and you see their ability to just go bot lane repeatedly, get kills. You see Draven, Morganio, Draven, Thresh, like all these super hyper aggressive 2v2 lanes, and that just throws out of the water because you could take two camps topside and get 200 gold, or you could get 4 kills.
So I have one more question now as well. 2v2, Attila and Jactroll have been inconsistent, to say the least. Frosk coming up against Hansama and Gorilla. I mean, how pivotal is this duo going to be?
It's all entirely about the matchup. I really strongly feel that Vitality Misfits is so pivotal on draft phase. Like, as soon as you've seen draft, it should be very easy to say who is going to win, because you have faith that between the veteran status of both these teams, that they understand exactly what their win conditions are going to be of their draft and know how to execute on them. So for me, this is actually all about the draft. I know that's a cop-out answer.
It's fair, right? It's fair. Misfits chose red side, though, so it gives them some additional tools.
I can't say that Attila and Jactroll are going to smash lane if they come in there with, like, an Ashe, Tahm, Kench. I'm like, well, we're just playing for survival, boys.
Yeah, but that's one of the interesting things, too, is I see actually Vitality in the past, they've gone for stuff like Draven Thresh, and then Mowgli is completely top-centric. So while yes, you can take the aggressive 2v2 and try to win, I don't think Vitality as a team want to be on that same page. So there are some questions that come into play. It's like, maybe you do just want to take the safe, consistent, reliable option.
Then there's that question, the veterancy of players, if they pick Draven Thresh and don't play around the lane, is that the right thing? Just super quickly, if you are just joining us, we are experiencing some technical difficulties on stage, and we'll keep you updated while we wait for Vitality versus Misfits. I'm, of course, joined by Froskurinn and Ender as we continue to just break down this matchup and its nuances. Ender, you are our patch guy, right? You are our gameplay guy. And you were saying that with Vitality in particular, with patch 9.4, there was more potential to play around Conqueror and the likes of it. Why did you feel that way in terms of our prep leading up to the show?
Yeah, so I think that coming in, right, Conqueror obviously released in a very overpowered state, and it was immediately sort of hotfixed and brought down. And the conversation we were having was, okay, well, Conqueror is going to sort of revolutionize top lane. We're going to see Fiora, we're going to see River, we're going to see all this stuff. I don't know why you guys are laughing so much.
Because I'm thinking, oh, we released something absolutely overpowered. I've never heard of that before.
Okay.
But it was hot-fixed, and we were expecting it to revolutionize. It hasn't revolutionized yet.
Yeah, so what I think we've seen is we've seen some picks. In the LCK, we've seen some Riven, some Fiora. Here, we just saw the Renekton as well. So there are new options, but it's not like top lane is being defined by this keystone. We're not seeing these heavy 1v1 matchups.
It's just added an extra flavor or dynamic to the drop.
Exactly, and I think what I was sort of expecting coming in after seeing its initial release was, oh, it's all about the side lane now. It's all about that 1 versus 1. So I was coming in today thinking, wow, Cabochard, fantastic player. He can, take these types of champions and dominate in the side lane. And from the first 2 games we've seen, I don't really think that's a more viable option.
Yeah, in the top lane, it feels like it's kind of like the Ryze and the Cannons. Jace is always being banned and denied. So the question is, what is going to be the pick for Cabochard here? I actually don't want to see Cannon because I just think that the teams aren't executing on him as appropriately as they need to be. So I want Cabo to really throw like a wrench in this, especially from... Oh, I was going to say he has red side, but I wrote it wrong. Vitality have blue side. You're going to have to blind pick it. Sorry, Cabo.
Yeah, he's not going to have fun in the top lane, but I do sort of like that you bring up the cannon because it's sort of a...
it feels bad right now.
Hold on. You bring up the cannon, right? So sOAZ has played cannon 3 times. He's got 2 losses, 2
Oh, here comes Quickshot, sOAZ cannons.
I've got to I've not been a fan of this split. I'm sorry, I love you and everything else. Just don't play cannon. Yeah, I'm not on board the hype train, okay? But when I look at Cabochard, he has played Urgot, Jace, Jarvan, and Rumble. Right? So a significantly reduced champion pool when we look at it. So to pull in one of these Conqueror champions would actually be a step out of what he's played so far, but something that fits in his wheelhouse because this is a guy's been around for a very long time and has played these types of champions in the past.
What I did was I thought about the draft. So you just listed all these champions. I was like, but Quickshot, when I'm drafting as Vitality versus Misfits, if I'm Vitality, I'm expecting you probably ban Draven, Lucian, Galio, unless you want to priority pick one of those champions, which we've seen some teams do against Hansama. Like, you don't want to leave the Draven open because you don't want to give him away free. Still feels really good on this patch, as does Lucian, despite being tapped. Whereas Misfits are probably going to be like, Jace, Jarvan, Olaf, off the board. Find something else.
Yeah, and for me, I sort of look at this, right? And I think 9.4, the biggest revolution for me is where do picks actually fall into the draft phase? Because I think draft
apparently Karthus is coming back.
Yeah, apparently Karthus is still pickable. But for me, it's more that prior, we had Urgot, right? And you pick him first rotation, right? Second rotation, all those things. Now that counter picks are a better option, thanks to Conqueror and the safe blind pickable Urgot being removed, now I think those picks are going to fall later and later into the draft.
Yep.
Red side specifically is going to be looking for the counter pick, and that's what's going to give that side an edge.
Well, we'll see how that plays out. Just another update for all the viewers. Of course, we are still working through that technical issue on stage. I want to step back from the matchup specifically and just remind everybody what's at stake here, because this game has huge impact on the standings. Vitality are still fighting to retain second place, while Misfits are in the race for playoffs. So I'm going to ask our production team to pull up the standings in just a moment or two. And one of the things that is huge for me is that with XL picking up a win against SK Gaming, that's going to give a little bit of breathing room to a team like Misfits, who is sitting at 6-6. And of course, Vitality, they have some wiggle room up at second, but they've got a substitute, and he's going to have to perform if they want to hold on to that semi-final spot and the race to Rotterdam.
I actually think it's pretty easy for Misfits here. Now, that said, not 100% guaranteed, but they own a lot of the head-to-heads and kind of that really tight pack of teams that are competing away from them, and their strength of schedule is pretty solid. So those two factors combined, Misfits might barely scrape him to playoffs, but I actually don't expect them to drop out.
Yeah, I mean, I think Misfits have to be super happy coming in here, seeing some mix-ups in the roster on the other side. And all this being said, you still have to win this game, because if you lose, all of a sudden you're tied with SK, you're fighting for 6th place. That gives Fnatic more room to actually come back, because now if those two teams are sitting at 6 wins, SK and Misfits, Fnatic is at 5 and they can slip right in.
So just to give you an update here as well, of course, Misfits own the head-to-head with Origin 2-0. They own the head-to-head with SK Gaming 2-0.
And who else can they own the head-to-head against, Trevor?
Well, they're about to face I can do with Fnatic. I got so excited.
They can do with Fnatic.
I got so excited.
And that's the key thing. It's that they own the head-to-head Origin to SK, and they're already 1-0 over Fnatic. They still have to play their last game. So again, that's why it's like, mathematically, statistically, whatever number you want to put to it, like, it's very hard for Misfits to fall out because of the teams that they're competing with.
Also, you know, the reason we keep saying head-to-head, for anybody that is just joining us or doesn't know, if teams are tied in the standings at the end of week 9, the end of the regular season, you look at the head-to-head records, and if a team has a clear 2-0 over somebody else, they win. You don't play an extra game. You have tiebreaker rules and scenarios first before you get to a game scenario. So this is good for Misfits, but they still need to win out. They still need to, you know, stay in the top 6, and they've got a very difficult road ahead. Of all the teams in the race, they've only got one. I think they play as an XL or Rogue, and all the other teams in the race around them play both of those teams.
Yeah, and you know, we talk a lot about Misfits and how they are trying to fight to get into 6th place, and of course, that's super, super important, but I also want to keep my eyes on Vitality, right? Because now with the 2nd seed going straight into that match, being guaranteed no lower than 3rd place at the end of playoffs, that's also very important. And for Vitality coming into this week, I thought they were pretty much locked in. Now we have yet to see them play with a substitute mid laner, and they still need to keep picking up these wins in order to sort of slip into that 1st, 2nd seed, get the 3rd place guaranteed, and go for a deep run in playoffs.
It's so difficult. It's so difficult. I mean, Yamato said at the beginning of the split with Mowgli coming into the team, this was the team that was going to win the spring split. And I've seen glimpses of that being potentially true, but I've also seen glimpses of them potentially dropping out for us.
I mean, it's the idea that if you get Misfits and Vitality on their best day, you probably, like, that's one of the most hype matches that we could ever have in the LEC. But we just keep getting them on a day where, like, they didn't get enough sleep, they didn't eat their Wheaties, like, something is going wrong, someone's girlfriend broke up with someone, I don't know, it's just a bad day.
No. Why did we have to go there? There was nothing to substantiate that. But I will say, actually, what was actually really gratifying to hear was YamatoCannon in the pregame interview just talking about how health comes first, and he will put the well-being of his players before success. And then immediately followed after by saying, well, look, Saken, you're stepping in. Make every moment you have perfect, because you could help us take 2nd place. You know?
Oh, man. I mean, YamatoCannon just knows the right thing to say in every situation. I mean, the man can talk. You remember him back at Worlds last year after they fell out, that insane speech he gave. Now with Saken coming in as well.
It was so compelling, you came back to Europe.
Exactly. But here's the thing, right? Like, for Saken, it's so great. You come in, and there's no better man to sort of hype you up to play in your first LEC game ever.
No, I actually think there's a question to ask here, and the answer might be Vitality of, if you had to make an emergency substitution like this, who do you think is actually the best system to slot into? And it might be Vitality because of Yamato.
Hold that thought. We won't get a chance to respond because the team's already on stage. Thank you for sticking with us. Let's head to the casters for Vitality and Misfits.
Hello! Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. We're back, ready to jump into Vitality versus Misfits. I'm very excited.
So am I.
We apologize about the delay.
That's
Thank you very much for sticking with us. But we now have all 10 players, which means we can, in fact, play some League of Legends, which is great.
It is. I think having 10 players is the optimal position to be.
Typically the optimal situation. So we talked a little bit earlier about draft. Some of the champions that I mentioned were things like the Jarvan.
Alistair.
Alistair is going to be another really big pick. I'm curious as to where Jace falls on the priority ladder.
We will see. A lot of top laners saying he's still S tier, still right at the top of that pick band. Yasuo ban, not too surprising. Zoe taken away. And the Irelia is not something I expected to see, but Febiven has had a couple of good performances on it.
Yeah, he did play it last week. He had a very successful time in the mid lane, got some cool outplays, even made it onto the mechanics on LoL Esports. and overall good stuff. So I think they're just showing that respect towards him. You've got to remember that it can also be flexed up towards the top side of the map. Have seen some players run it with the new Conqueror, and some have considered it a slightly stronger pick. But regardless, Draven and Lucian taken off the board.
So Draven was actually what Attila played last time these two teams met, and Lucian was what Hans Summer played. Attila won the matchup in the bottom lane, but we're going to see neither of those AD carries in this game. And you said it, Vedi, the Jarvan comes out first pick from Vitality.
No real surprise. It does have the flexibility of going both to top lane and jungle. Cabochard has had very solid performances on it. And we talked about the Rek'Sai for Maxlore as well. It was one of his OG picks, and they instantly lock it in. So they've already got early game power. They've got some scaling with Hans Summer on the Kai'Sa. Very excited for this Misfits draft.
All purple team come in, I believe. But yes, I love the Rek'Sai pick. I love the Kai'Sa pick here as well. We saw how strong Hans Summer can be on the Kai'Sa just last week. Vitality now need to work out how they answer. Support AD carry would be my bet in this phase of the draft. Otherwise, you're going to get a little bit locked out.
Not surprised that we're seeing the Tahm Kench because they're expecting the Analyst to come through from Gorilla. As mentioned earlier, it is his most played support, and it is something that he has a lot of comfort and success with in the laning phase. Now, my question is, will Vitality go for something standard? Ooh, they're actually going for the Ryze because I expected them to lock in something like an AD carry. Because remember that Cassio is still open, and there have been discussions around Cassio with Conqueror, and she is a very strong pick that can match very well into the Ryze. Don't talk about the hover, it's always a bait. It's also a terrible matchup for Zed. Cassio is kind of where my head is leaning towards right now.
So the new Cassio, you do Twin Fangs max, you max out that E, you get the Conqueror stacks off it really easily, and you can get a lot of damage as well. But instead, Febiven going more for a control mage, more utility in the team fights in the form of the Orianna.
Interesting. Now, he did play the Ori last week. Remember the Protect the Hans Summer composition?
I do.
They had the Ivan, they had the Orianna.
They had the Kai'Sa.
And they had the Kai'Sa. And Hans Summer basically had a shield as big as his health bar, and he was pretty unkillable later on into the game. Orianna versus Ryze. We can talk a little bit more about the matchup once we get into the game. It's very neutral, very farm heavy. And now we actually see Misfits putting a lot of focus on early game jungle bans, some of the things that Maxlore perhaps doesn't want to deal with, suggesting that they're expecting this Jarvan to go up towards the top side.
I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. Cabochard's already played it twice this split, although Mowgli's played it twice as well. So an equal split across the Vitality players. So Rakan ban, just taken away from Gorilla there.
Oh, that's largely because Soraka is considered such a good pick into Tahm Kench. You can bully her out of the laning phase, and clearly they're expecting Gorilla to play it. So they're showing that respect, they're taking it off the board. Right now, I do think that what Misfits is lacking is kind of engage. I think that even though Rek'Sai falls off, once you get into the later stages of the game, Misfits compensate for that by having good scaling with the Orianna and the Kai'Sa. So now we just need to find where they get that engaged from. And again, you're kind of looking towards this Alistair once more for Gorilla. And perhaps Vitality want to just ban it away, limit those options from the side of Misfits.
And another option is something like the Rakan. It does give you quite good engage. We have seen Gorilla play it. And although it is nerfed on 9.3 into 9.4, it's still strong enough that you can play it. I'm not going to talk about the hovers for now. I want to talk about what Vitality are still looking for from this team composition, because we said Misfits want a bit of engage, they've got good scaling. What do Vitality need to round out their comp?
Well, right now for Vitality, they have damage with Ryze. He does very well in a side lane. One of the things that Misfits may struggle to deal with is that potential side lane Ryze later on into the game. I'd quite like them to keep Cabochard on this Jarvan and they lock in a jungler along with an AD carry. If they wanted a couple more engaged tools, they could consider the Ashe. On top of that, Sylas as well. Remember that this is likely going to be going into the top lane. We saw it last patch, where Sylas was consistently picked into the Urgot. Many top laners consider it to be a very strong pick because of the amount of sustain, and you can even out-bully the Urgot, and even after the nerfs, where his laning phase is made even weaker now, it should be a pretty good matchup. But we're going to see a bit of an Attila special with the Jinx. This is something that he played, I believe, once, maybe even twice last year.
Yep. Hasn't played it yet this year, though. We have seen, of course, Reckless play it already for fans.
Yes. So yeah, that's quite an interesting matchup. We can talk a little bit about that once we get into the game. But right now, you can see that Vitality, they have a pretty solid 1-3-1 going on. Sylas very strong in the side lane, same for the Ryze. Vitality also have Engage, with Mowgli going to be on the Jarvan. And they also have that scaling late game damage should they need it from the Jinx. But I do feel that because they're running Ryze and the Sylas, their team fight is not the strongest. Whereas you compare that to Misfits, their team fight is very strong. You talked about the Rakan earlier on. That is the engage that they were lacking. You have very solid follow-up with the Orianna and the Kai'Sa. The only lanes that they're going to really struggle with is this Urgot, who I think now has a weaker laning phase, falls off harder later on into the game as well because of how hard he gets outscaled by things like the Ryze and the Sylas. Why do I keep forgetting his name?
It's okay.
But Misfits basically want to try and force fights. And they're going to try and use that by building an early game lead and then forcing those 5v5s around objectives. And again, remember we said earlier on, Misfits last week had a bit of an over-reliance on Baron. I expect Baron to be another big point of contention, but it very much depends on how this early game goes, because Vitality, if they get their solo laners ahead, they have the ability to play on both side lanes, and then it becomes very difficult for Misfits to group and force.
So last time we saw these two teams play, we saw Vitality play through the bottom lane. As we came into the pick and ban phase, you said, will we see Vitality do that again? I think we can both agree, doesn't look like they're going to be playing through bot in this game. Much more about their solo laners, whereas Misfits probably going to be looking to get that early lead down towards the bottom lane, maybe in the mid, but Orianna not the best for ganks.
The thing is, when I look at this bot lane, I feel like Rakan is actually a decent matchup into the Tahm Kench, because every time you can actually just focus the Tahm Kench if he tries to consume an ally, they then both get knocked up. But also Jinx, low mobility carry, becomes very easy to land that flash, charm, engage setup, which the Rek'Sai can follow up on. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Maxlore invest his resources towards the bot side of the map this time around.
We'll keep our eyes on Maxlore as he goes through his early jungle pathing. And of course on Saken, his first game in the LEC stage. The Frenchman coming up from Vitality B to sub in for Jizuke, who is unfortunately unwell. We send him all of our best wishes.
Do hope that he gets better. I know how frustrating it is to sit and watch the show from home.
Yeah, I mean, 2 weeks ago you did it, a week ago I did it, and already we see Hans Summer winning the trades.
So we'll have a look, see. What are we setting up for in terms of the early game? Cabochard has taken a bit of a sneaky path.
Yeah.
We do have some committed Misfits fans in the audience.
I'll be
Thank you
honest,
very much for being
originally I thought they were saying Vedius.
No.
I was like, oh.
No. Big Misfits fans in the crowd. So what Misfits have spotted is that there was a bit of an invade from Vitality towards the bot side of the map. So Misfits are trading by invading into the top side. I expect to see some vision from sOAZ. I do believe we see that Poro being put into the blue side bush. So Misfits will have some vision of the blue buff. There you can see on your screens. And they also have that ward in the river towards the top side, so Maxlore will have an idea of who's starting. And you will notice that Maxlore has no pull, which means that Vitality can assume that he's starting red because they decided to invest vision towards the top side, but they don't have reliable information, as Hans Summer, Gorilla, and sOAZ all appeared in lane at the same time, whereas Misfits should get a pretty good idea of where Mowgli is playing right now.
So Oracle's lens first on Jactroll here to make sure there's no vision in the bush. Mowgli's going to come across. Ward does come out from Gorilla a little bit later though, so they will know if Mowgli comes in for the gank, but looks like it's going to be vertical jungling for the moment. Map split. However, Maxlore has not gone for that blue invade. He's gone for his own Krugs first.
So to expand a little bit more on what splitting the map is, basically you'll see that both junglers will now, rather than do from top side of the map to the bottom side or vice versa, they now actually go from left to right or right to left. What this means is that Vitality's bot lane doesn't have to worry about jungle attention because they know they have support from their jungler towards the bot side of the map. And this means that Maxlore will be forced up towards the top side, he'll get spotted on a ward, and this means Hans Summer and Gorilla have to play much more defensively.
Really like this though, the rotation down from Cabochard, just a little bit quicker on the movement, meaning that Maxlore couldn't get that Scuttle Crab. And I've talked a lot to Ender about Rek'Sai and the changes coming in here because he used to be a Rek'Sai main, he played a lot of it on the playtest team. And the couple of changes that we see to her on this patch actually make her a lot stronger. Mowgli jumping in here, trading onto Maxlore, Maxlore trying to get the Queen's Wrath off, heals up as he goes into the burrow as well, but Mowgli in a very strong position to trade here. But the extra Fury you get from Q and the basically undodgeable ultimate now as well actually have put Rek'Sai a little bit higher in priority.
She certainly is. However, what you noticed there was because she was a level down, she loses to the Jarvan. Jarvan does have a decent amount of damage early on, largely because he can get the knockup and he has all that bonus damage from his passive. What Mowgli actually decided to do was, he started on his red, he went enemy blue, he secured the Scuttle for his bot side of the map, and then he immediately went up towards top because he knew that Sylas had pressure, and as you identified, Medic, Sylas could come down and support the Jarvan should he get into a bit of a skirmish with Maxlore, so he didn't want to take that. He ends up getting 3-buffed, and now this early game focused Rek'Sai is a little bit behind in the early game, which is the worst situation for Rek'Sai, given that she, as a champion, as many junglers will say, is only useful until 20 minutes.
By many junglers, do you mean Ender?
Well, no, I actually, because I had the opportunity to speak to Xerxes,
Okay.
I spoke with Amazing on the desk, I had the opportunity to speak with Ender as well, but generally the consensus around Rek'Sai is you build her damage towards the early game, so you go things like a Warrior, maybe you go Black Cleaver as well. Sometimes you go things like a GA early, maybe second or third item, depending on your preference, but ultimately you just build a lot of damage early because she has so much burst and it's so easy to stack those Conqueror stacks, and you just gank a lot because you have so many creative gank paths with your E. She's just super strong in the early, but it's difficult for her to actually set plays up later on into the game because you build so much damage. She's very squishy and easy to kill, and all she becomes is damage later on into the game. So she's significantly less valuable.
Cabo trading with sOAZ here, but Maxlore on his way, looking for the burrow, flash it. Cabo flashes early, respects the fact that Rek'Sai can just flash in.
So they do get the Summoner Spell out from Cabo. All it requires is an appearance from Maxlore. But again, he's falling further and further behind. Level 4 to the level 3 of Maxlore means that in this early game, Mowgli has the majority of the control. They haven't invested very much into vision, but the experience difference between the junglers is a very big deal.
About 300 gold between them, and every level is about 500 to 600 gold worth of just base stats as well. So every time you see a level advantage, the reason we bring attention to it is because you're getting 1,000 gold just extra in your character's kit.
Now, junglers at home, you will notice that Mowgli has decided to go for a Ruby Crystal, suggesting that he's building Cinderhulk and going more for the tanky Jarvan. So for solo queue players at home, if you have 3 damage dealers, you don't need to build more damage on your Jarvan.
What about my KDA?
You can go for the defensive build.
You don't get an
tanky.
S+ with a defensive build, Vedius.
Yeah, well, he's an assist magnet, Medic. He
Okay.
throws his E down, he buffs everyone up. I think Jarvan is one of the easiest champions to get a good KDA on, but it means that you can't afford to die. So you want to be tanky, you want to be an engaged tool, and Mowgli is relying on the rest of his team to be the primary damage sources.
We put a lot of focus on the junglers in the early portion of this game, tracking how they rotated through their jungle paths. Want to bring attention just to a couple of quick item builds here. Execution is calling first on sOAZ into the Sylas, just trying to get rid of some of that heat.
Oh yeah, it really does help in terms of the 1v1 as well. You'll notice that sOAZ constantly being pushed. Ooh,
Flash in from Mowgli, gets the knockup. Cabochard with the chase, has the ultimate. Fear Beyond Death will pull it back. And that's first blood to Vitality.
Good play there from Vitality. I love the fact that sOAZ had his ultimate copied, and then that was used to execute him before he even got level 6 himself. Beautiful stuff from Vitality.
We said it was Misfits that wanted to have the early game pressure from their jungler. Mowgli finding the perfect opportunity to gank. And Vitality not really losing too much on the other side, you know. Maxlore and Gorilla invading here, trying to steal away the red, but Jactroll's doing a good job of just harassing them across this wall. And Mowgli on his way.
Keep your eyes on the minimap. You'll see Orianna making her way down as well. Mowgli wants to challenge this, but right now he doesn't have the numbers to, so he's going to be forced to back off, or he could risk losing his life.
Losing the red buff isn't the end of the world. Mowgli jumps in, gets the double knock-up, Saken on his way as well. Jactroll devours up his jungler. Attila coming in from across the wall. Zap does not connect because all Misfits will take the party cone across the wall.
I thought I did see an Ignite come out, but must have been mistaken. Maybe it was a red buff. Regardless, Misfits walk away with the red. Maxlore going to be pretty happy. The very least gets one of his jungle camps back, seeing as he only started with one in the early game. But I want to kind of tie back to that early gank that we saw towards the top side of the map. You talked about it. From the side of Misfits, we wanted to see this Rek'Sai having an impact in the early game, and it hasn't really turned into much. Whereas Mowgli, because he knows that he has pressure towards the top side of the map, is able to set up this play. And I love the fact that you can steal away these ultimates and then execute the champion with them. Cabochard was able to get level 6 first, and now they're making a return game.
Mowgli coming in once again, has the Cataclysm now as well to lock up sOAZ if he wants. They don't even need to use it. sOAZ is done for. Mowgli gets another kill up towards this top side of the map, and Vitality are playing perfectly through this top lane.
And now Cabochard is starting to snowball. He has a healthy CS advantage. He's going to pick himself up 2 solo plates, and you can see already 1.2k gold lead in his back pocket. So while Misfits are struggling to find an early game lead, Vitality are doing what they always do, and either play through Cabo, and even though Jizuke is not here, they're still finding these early game leads.
Really good stuff from Vitality I know a lot of us, when we saw the news about Jizuke, said, okay, we'll change our votes. Misfits are going to take this win, but this start, Vitality playing through their tried and true strong top laner in the form of Cabochard, teaming up with Mowgli. It's quintessential Vitality from this split.
But it's one of those things where when we've seen this champion played in the top lane, it hasn't resulted in wins. It hasn't really resulted in much. Even though he's very strong in a side lane, often teams get forced into 5v5ing at some point. And that's where we see him kind of fall apart, especially with Cabochard actually going more for this AP style of build. And we'll see how that works out for him later, because I'm a much bigger fan of the tank build that we've been seeing out from the LCK and even, excuse me, earlier today.
So I think if you are sitting in Misfits' shoes here, you know, you're only 10 minutes into the game, your early jungler hasn't had the effect you wanted, but you're halfway to that sort of 20-minute Rek'Sai is no longer a good champion mark, right? And you're thinking, okay, first 10 minutes, been pretty bad. What do we do in the second 10 minutes to actually activate this team comp? Because otherwise, you are just going to fall behind the 1-3-1 pressure from Vitality.
Well, Rakan level 6, that's mainly the thing that you'll look to play around.
He's got it.
Yes, he does. And it's really easy to set up a play on the bot side of the map. I don't know if they necessarily have the burst to find a kill, but if they can get some summoner spells, get some plates, start this ball rolling for Hansama, then that's, I think, the next step for Misfits. Because otherwise, if they don't make anything happen soon, Cabochard is just going to continue to extend his lead. Look, now you can see that he's running the risk of getting dived once again. Ryze making his way up towards the top side. All this vision being invested from Vitality to secure Cabochard playing as aggressively as he wants.
Preemptive swap here from Misfits. They don't want to lose out on this first tower. Already 3 of the turret plates down there in the top side. Cabochard getting a lot of gold out of it. Maxlore's going to come in here. They know Mowgli is in that bush now. Gorilla there. sOAZ, they all jump in, but there's 4 members. Misfits just waiting around the corner. The Abyss Void comes in. And now Hansama in the back of the fight. Jumped in with the Void Seeker. So much damage coming out. Gorilla solo on the front line. Maxlore's got 1. Gorilla still alive. Just about. Mowgli eaten up by the Tahm. Kench just in time. Jactroll has the flash. He'll split Mowgli out. Hansama chasing onto Saken. Here is Febiven, though, and Saken left to the walls. It feels like the shockwave connects, and Gorilla across the wall gets in. Dies for it, but they get 2 in the top lane.
And what was that play from Vitality? They saw 4 members from Misfits, but still believe that they could win out on the fight. Fun fact, they don't. Misfits picked themselves up 2 kills for 1, and were able to regain some control back in this game.
Getting this Rift Herald is so big for them as well. Opens up the map even more. Vitality sitting on about 1,000 gold lead at the moment, but that is going to shrink as we see Misfits start to utilize the pressure they just gained.
Really dangerous play there from Vitality. They thought that they could just execute the Urgot before the rest of the team could assist, but they couldn't. Maxlore comes in from behind. You can see all this effort thrown into killing sOAZ. I'm curious as to where the ultimate lands. I think it does go... Does it land onto the Urgot, or does it land onto the Rakan? I'm not entirely sure, but ultimately they can't find the execute, and meanwhile Maxlore and Hansama are just devastating the backline, and then Febiven is allowed to just roam up towards top. He lands a great ultimate, and while it does cost Gorilla his life, it ends up being a 2-for-1 overall, and some of these big carries pick themselves up some crucial kills.
Hansama getting a couple of assists in that as well means he's now got a BF sword on the Kai'Sa scaling. Definitely there for the Misfits team. Now, Orianna, Kai'Sa, that team fight later on is going to be so strong. And I do want to bring attention to Hansama, because last week he was one of the key reasons that Misfits won their games. The key reasons they went 2-0. Had such a strong performance on the Kai'Sa, on the Cassiopeia. And now you need to see him doing what he did last week again.
And they put some pressure on him by playing the Kai'Sa, but it's a champion that I think he's very comfortable with. And I think in these team fights, he has a lot of mobility and will be very impactful later on. But again, I also want to reinforce Febiven, because on this Orianna, he's been having some really good performances over the last few weeks. And initially, at the beginning of the split, I was pretty critical of his performances. I felt like that he was always on the Galio duty. He wasn't converting his leads into significant performances. Whereas last week on the Irelia, on the Orianna, I really do feel like he showcased much more of what he wanted to demonstrate. And he was a big carry threat for the team. And now he's built up a pretty solid lead in the mid lane. Once he completes that Ludens, he's going to be a very scary champion. And it's only going to get harder for Vitality.
It feels like they're still in an okay spot, though, right? Like, that last team fight wasn't good for them. They do still have a big Sylas who's almost 30 CS ahead, or 21 CS ahead of his lane opponent. He can still split. The Ryze, about even in CS, you know, 15, 20 behind. It's actually about 600 gold down on the Orianna now as well. So you want to see Saken just getting a little bit more gold funneled into him as we see him engage onto Maxlore. Mowgli jumps in, sOAZ with the long range, Fear Beyond Death. Maxlore has a lot of damage, and sOAZ will get a counter kill. 1-for-1 trade there in the bottom side.
But that just showcases the amount of damage that the Rek'Sai actually has at her disposal. The fact that that should have been a death sentence for Maxlore. He didn't have the flash. Cabochard was on his way up, but it actually results in a 1-for-1 trade, and sOAZ gets the kill, so he's actually a little bit more relevant. But now we've got to keep our eyes on Gorilla as he gets chunked out by the duo of Vitality.
Attila has the ultimate. Gorilla with that shield from his passive, but it will be the first tower to fall in the top side. Vitality get it. Attila gets the goal.
So we didn't talk much about this matchup, but this is a really good opportunity to showcase what happens. Kai'Sa is a very short-range champion, and one of the great things about Jinx is the more levels that you put in her Q, means the more range that she gets in her rocket form. So you charge up the stacks, the attack speed stacks with her base Q. I believe you're going to know the names, right?
Yeah.
Tell me the names.
Which one? The
machine gun?
Fishbones.
Is the fishbone, and then the rocket
one.
launcher.
Yeah, the rockety ball.
Wait, isn't that fishbones?
Yeah, it is.
Because it's the shark?
Yeah.
Oof, you let me down.
That's what I know. I said that. You just decided to pick the wrong name. Because do you want the name of the ability? Is what I thought you wanted. Which
What's the
is
machine gun called?
You have Pow Pow and Fishbone.
Okay. So you charge the stacks up with Pow Pow,
Okay.
and then once you've got 3 stacks with the bonus attack speed, then you harass with Fishbones. And because you outrange the Kai'Sa, it's really difficult for her to trade back. So that's how you can harass her during the laning phase. And with a completed BS, and a completed Infinity Edge even, you're in a very good spot.
Hansama going for the double pickaxe build. We're seeing this all the time on Kai'Sa's now to get that Q evolution, the Akakian rain up and working. Rift Herald used mid here, but Vitality already have 3 players. The quickness comes in from Gorilla. There's the shockwave as well. It's only going to hit onto Jactroll. He's very low. He gets taken down. Misfits going to kill him now. They're going to use the Rift Herald to push in mid as well.
So this is what I love about the Rakan pick. I think it's very good against things like Tahm, Kench, and low mobility carries. Attila was forced to burn both summoner spells, and Misfits still find a kill and a tower, but Vitality's still leading goal.
The thing with this is, that's great for Misfits, right? But if you're Gorilla now, you're looking at no flash, you're looking at no ignite. If you get caught out in the next few minutes, it's actually a really difficult position for Misfits to be in because you don't have your ultimate either. So, Misfits, if they do this every now and again, is great. If they get caught out while in this sort of grace period, they're going to struggle.
What I think is really important to remember, though, is that Misfits are making this play as a team. Because remember, the thing they have to avoid from Vitality's perspective is not allowing Vitality to play on the side lanes. And by forcing these plays, it immediately forces Saken to come back off the top side of the map. You can't have Cabochard pushing on bot anymore because the risk of them getting collapsed increases. So Misfits have to be proactive. They need to try and force these plays, and right now, they're in a fine position. They can go back to scaling. They still have the team fight ability, but I want to see these confident plays from Misfits if they want to stand a chance of getting a win over Vitality, who is still very strong.
That they are. Want to see how in tune with Vitality Saken is as well as we get towards this 1-3-1. It can be difficult to enact. You need to understand exactly where you can position, where everyone else is on the map. And Saken has been playing relatively well in the French leagues. I think Vitality be at 4 and 5 at the moment, just sitting in the 6th or 7th spot. So he's had some good performances, but hasn't always been the most consistent. Gorilla's going to jump in here, gets the double charm Attila, just about able to get away. Febiven put the ball in. Maxlore gets a kill. There's so much damage on the Tahm catching now. Mowgli there. Saken teleported in, but you just can't catch out Misfits. Fight in the bottom lane as sOAZ just gets rained hell upon by Cabochard. Flashes away from the Fear Beyond Death, but sOAZ is definitely losing this 1v1. Even under the tower, Cabochard just jumps in. sOAZ. Oh, Cabochard goes gold. Mowgli on his way, but Maxlore's there to stop him. Cabochard has to flash away. Maxlore trade over to Mowgli. The Void Rush. He chases him down. He's 6th in the bangs, but he can't quite get the kill. There's the knockup. Mowgli in the cataclysm. Maxlore flashed away from it, though, and Mowgli's going to escape. Maxlore with an awful flash means that Mowgli gets away, and now Maxlore has to run because Attila is here to help his team. Cabochard jumps in once again, but not too much more going on.
So that happened. Maxlore, very unfortunate flash there. Means that he couldn't quite secure the kill, which should have been a pretty free kill because he was doing everything right up until that last moment. And it ends up being just a lot of summoner spells burnt towards the bot side of the map, while nothing really gets converted. Drake is still up, Tower's still up.
It was fun to watch.
Let's have a look back at how this all started. So again, Gorilla forcing an engage onto the 3 of Vitality that are trying to gain pressure and get vision around Dragon. They force the teleport while also finding a kill, and then while sOAZ tries to come up to help his team, he actually gets engaged on by Cabochard. Now, a good flash here means that he dodges out from his own ultimate, but then Cabochard goes for a dive. And this is the dangerous bit because sOAZ still has the shield and a good knockback, But while that's going on, Mowgli and Maxlore begin the 1v1. I like the use of the ultimate to keep close, but Maxlore should recognize here that the flash is already down. And I'm not entirely sure what he was trying to flash there. Whether it be the damage from Mowgli or... I'm not entirely sure.
I'm not sold on it either. Maybe thought Mowgli was going to flash away. Saken gets away. Nicely done from him there, actually. It looked like Maxlore was burrowed next to him, about to land the knockup, but he rooted him in place and used the Realm Warp to escape from the 1-3-1. Still underway here from Vitality. About 1,000 gold the difference between the two teams. We're getting up towards that 20-minute mark. Whenever you talk about 20 minutes and Misfits, you have to look at whether they'll force fights around that Baron, which is one of the key sort of components of this team composition. Get a neutral objective and force some fights.
Yeah, and the thing is for Vitality, it's a bit of a weird situation for them now because it's really difficult for the Ryze to threaten much on the side lane. His primary job is to just wave clear and then look for windows to group with his team because he doesn't have the teleport. And you're actually seeing Cabochard group up with his team right now because he can't afford to push up bot. But the fact that only Cabochard has a lead and it's really easy for Misfits like 3 or even 4-man to engage on the Attila, Jactroll, Mowgli trio means that it gets harder and harder for Cabochard to actually exert his lead on a side lane. Meanwhile, for Misfits, they're continuing to scale, and what I want to draw attention to is the level difference.
Do it, Vedi.
Maxlore is level 11 to Mowgli's level 10, which means the jungler that was behind has now completed his first jungle item and is now working towards the Black Cleaver. Febiven has a whole level up on Saken and is 1-0-2, likely going to be completing his Morellonomicon on his next back, and Hansam is still even in levels with Attila. But basically the core carries of Misfits in their mid and AD are in a perfectly fine position. And as long as Gorilla can continue to engage and set up these plays, Misfits still have answers to the side lane pressure that Vitality is trying to force.
Attila does have a whole completed item over Hans Summer at the moment with the Runan's Infinity Edge, just the Infinity Edge of Hans Summer. I wonder if Hans, sitting about 1,000 gold or so we'll probably back and get just a little bit.
I think that came from the early plates. So remember we saw Hans Summer swap to top. I think Attila actually picked up quite a few plates.
He got 4 plate spot, and he got top tower with...
Yeah, 4 plate spots?
I'm pretty sure they got 4 plate spot. I might be wrong. I'm pretty sure they got a few plates.
But I know he got plate spot and he got plates top. Ultimately, he got a lot of plates, which has resulted in the
3
gold
plates,
he now
according
has.
to our stats.
3 plates, there we go. So that's where all of his gold is coming from, and you are right. So Attila is very strong, but again, it's really hard for him to do much with the gold that he has when he's just sitting in the mid lane against things like the Rakan that's primed and ready to flash engage on top of him.
Misfits just getting river control here. You can see Attila and Jactroll try to get in. Unable to do too much. The Zap doesn't steal away the Scuttle Crab, and Misfits will push out mid. And it looks like, once again, they are going to look towards this Baron with Cabochard pushing in the side lane. sOAZ has to come across and deal with it. He has the teleport on that Summoner Spellbook, so we'll be able to join the action if any fights do erupt. And I think for a moment, Vedi, I want to just take a look at the big picture as we see the teams just banding around this vision control. I'm going to wait because whenever they drop the scoreboard, there's always the possibility of action. Oh, it's back up. Okay, there's no action going to happen, Vedi. I want to take a look at the big picture because Misfits sitting at 6-6 actually were very fortunate to see XL beat SK Gaming earlier today. It means that SK Gaming is sitting at 6-7. If Misfits take this win,
they join Origin and Splice.
They join Origin and Splice. And, I mean, Schalke's sitting there. Origin's still at 6-6. Did they win earlier today? Have I forgotten?
No, Schalke play Fnatic at the end of the day.
So Schalke wins. They join Schalke and Splice.
No, because Schalke have only 5 losses.
That is true.
So that's why Schalke still... We have the scores on screen.
Yeah, well, let's have a look at that. They join Origin and Splice.
Yes, which is a big deal, which is the point that you're trying to get
That is exactly what I'm trying to make.
Because
they move themselves out of that 6th spot and then get a tied 4th spot instead.
We had a hashtag at the beginning of the day, which is every game counts.
Which it does.
This is one of the more important games for Misfits because if they can get a win over Vitality, it really does help them in moving up the standings because they're one of the top teams. But we've got to come back to the game. Febiven is forced to flash.
And cleanse.
And cleanse. So this time, Vitality actually brought their split pusher to the mid lane to try and force a play, trying to leverage the gold advantage that Attila does have. And the fact that Febiven has no summoner spells means that he now has to be a lot more careful when pressuring around the map.
It's one of the bonuses of having these outer towers still up as well, because it means the waves will naturally push quicker towards the Misfits side, because minions get cleared out by the turret. So Vitality still in a good spot for that split push, burning for Febiven's ultimate as well. Sorry, his flash as well around this 23-minute mark.
That is one thing I'd like to point out that Vitality do have just greater map control right now because, as you rightly said, one of the advantages of having those outer towers up is less to do with the bounce back, but more to do with the fact that the enemy can't push past the river, right? Which means that because you don't have to catch 2 waves when pushing back out, means that Misfits have a much smaller amount of time where they can do something as a 5-man. So in an ideal world, they actually want to take these outer towers as quickly as possible, but to Vitality's credit, they've done a great job of keeping top and bot pushed, meaning Misfits are forced to split up, and they want to try and do this as often as possible.
Hans Summer walks straight over a ward here. Bissell Voyage coming in. They're trying to catch Hans Summer out of position. Febiven there with the shield. Saken running in, but Hans Summer will get sped up. Mowgli now onto Maxlore. It's a 4v5 at the moment because that Urgot still down towards the bottom side. Vitality just continues to push forward. They have this map pressure. They can get some deep wards in here as well.
And again, look at the windows that Vitality are using. You already talked about it, Medic. The bot side of the map, sOAZ is pushed underneath this tower. It means that Vitality don't have to expend anything, but they actually had Cabochard TP in, and now they're going to force the Baron. This is very dangerous from Vitality.
Here we go. Vitality start up the Baron. Jactroll and Mowgli off towards the side. There's a control ward in the pit, meaning that Misfits do not have a vision on how low this is. Mowgli jump forward, maybe. Gorilla up, has the flash, has the quickness, can jump in.
So I wonder if Vitality are just trying to force a fight right now because they know that Attila is strong and they think that in the 5v5 they can actually come out ahead. Now the teleport comes in from sOAZ. Misfits, so they want this fight.
Gorilla has the engage, got the quickness, he can jump onto that backline, but once again, it looks like Vitality knew they'd burnt their own teleport and had to try and force Misfits to use the teleport.
It just felt like such a strange... Okay, so I think that's the ultimate thing. The fact that Cabochard TP'd in mean they had to try and get the TP out from sOAZ. Otherwise, it becomes much harder for them to generate pressure on the side.
But here's he gets Tahm Kench as well. But it's Mowgli. Misfits in a 5v3 just force Vitality away. But no summoners really burnt. Only Mowgli used his flash. Cabochard on the chase. Ryze still up towards the top lane. Saken, the other part of that 1-3-1. We haven't seen him that much in the side lane by himself, but right now he is, and he's pushing towards this tower.
And again, there's no answer because no one else has TP. Saken still has his teleport up. He now has the level advantage over Febiven. And Vitality's side laners are coming online much more. They've completed more of their core item builds. And this is a great situation for them to be in, but Saken may lose his life.
Flashes away, Hans Summer jumps in, so is on the chase with the Ghost as well. Pops the fear beyond death, Saken goes golden, Vitality starting up the Baron, it looks like, as Saken gets caught out, he's shut down. Vitality did start the Baron, but they stop it immediately. There is also an Infernal Drake on the cards, if they want to go for it. Fight in the mid lane, Febiven pops the shockwave straight away, Jactroll gobbles up Attila, jump in for Mowgli, Febiven still surviving, Mowgli will go very low, but he's still alive as well, and Vitality get a 1-for-1 trade.
No summoner spells on Febiven meant that Vitality could look for that pick and secure it. Ends up being a 1-for-1 overall, as you identified, Medic, but Misfits should now be able to take some of these outer towers down, which means they'll be able to regain some pressure on the map. But Vitality, even with a sub, even though it cost him his life, he got a really big objective there for the side of Vitality. The fact that he drew so many members of Misfits up towards the top side of the map means that Vitality may be able to finally take down this mid-tier 1.
So it's still clearing it out. Attila sitting at 3 items, that rapid fire cannon, Runan's Hurricane combination, giving him a lot of critical strike chance alongside that Infinity Edge. Mowgli going to start up the Infernal here, should be pretty easy to cure for them because the rest of Misfits have just gone back to reset. And now, when we get to this point in the game, Vedius, I think you always have to look at, will Misfits be able to force a fight quickly enough to deal with Vitality split pushing?
It's very much it's about where and when you force the fight, right? Because if you just blindly engage onto the enemy team and you don't convert it into anything, then there's the risk that you just lose your side lane because you spent all these resources and now you don't have anyone to deal with the man that's just sitting in a side lane pushing non-stop. So the thing that we're seeing that's harder and harder to do is actually catch Attila out of position. Jactroll is doing a great job of providing that peel whenever necessary, which means that your priority target is very... Ooh, Mowgli.
Mowgli caught out. Pops the stopwatch. Doesn't have the flash, but Jactroll's there with the Devour. Jactroll has been on point, gobbling up his teammates to keep them alive in this game.
That was very dangerous for Mowgli. I think he face-checked that, and he could have very well lost his life there. Will burn the stopwatch. Continuing to build much more towards that tanky route, but I like that we're still seeing Saken off in a side lane. He has the TP. They're actually sending to the bot side of the map now because Cabochard doesn't have the teleport, so if you keep him top lane, he'll be closer to the Baron should it start off. Meanwhile, sOAZ, no teleports. He cannot join the fight. So if Vitality were to force anything, now may very well be the best time for them to do so.
Looks like they're just going to try and push for this mid lane tower. Summer is up towards the top side, catching away. Maxlore maybe
dangerous.
Forcing onto Saken here. He has the teleport, has the realm warp as well, but Maxlore going in. Tower goes down in the mid lane. Vitality on the chase. Maxlore gets the knock up, but Saken just trading. Winning the 2v1 at the moment. The Abyss of Voyage comes in as well from Jactroll. There's the redemption. And Saken, he's pulling his best Jizuke face on because he takes him out in the 2v1. The realm warp coming in for the chase as well. And there's something about Vitality mid laners playing Ryze in a side lane because today is Saken's day.
Double kill for the substitute mid laner as he outplays Misfits. The rest of the support comes in from Vitality, but honestly, it wasn't needed. Beautiful step there from Vitality, and again, you see the weakness of this Rek'Sai later on into the game. Very squishy, full damage, instantly gets killed, and now it's Gorilla in trouble.
Charm came out from Cabochard, stole away the ultimate. There's the redemption as well. Gorilla will be healed up, but doesn't want to use the ult. Cabo gets the kill, and now the Baron started by Vitality. They've just opened up this map in a heartbeat, it feels. 28 minutes in, they're going for the Baron. 5,000 HP on it. Cabochard very low, but he heals up with the Kingslayer. 2,000 HP left on the Baron. He's going to get taken. The shotgun comes out with a big great, and Attila flashes across the wall for the kill. He takes one. He's looking behind someone as well. Can't quite land the zap, but he will chase away Misfits.
And Vitality secure everything. They get a bunch of kills. They find themselves the Baron, and now they're looking primed and ready to shut down the 2-0 from Misfits last week. Beautiful stuff from the mid lane from Vitality, setting up that play. We'll likely get a replay of it, and as you said, Medic, Vitality's mid laners doing stuff on a side lane with Ryze. Beautiful shout out to Jizuke, who is sitting at home, and Saken in our Alienware replay will just demonstrate how much damage the Ryze does have against a squishy target. No magic resistance means that he just blows Maxlore up. And then you also have the assistance from the other Vitality members, but again, Saken, he probably didn't need it. He has more than enough damage himself. He had the Realm Warp, and they're able to take down sOAZ. So double kill goes to him, and then they immediately make their way towards the Baron. And in this situation with no jungler, and a bit of a misplay there from Gorilla, ends up getting collapsed upon very quickly. He ends up losing his life as well. And then with only a 2 versus 5, Misfits couldn't do anything to stop the Baron from being taken.
Now just pushing in the mid lane. Vitality going for a 1-4 split. It's Saken off towards the side lane, just keeping that cannon minion buffed up, and Misfits 6,000 gold in the hole. 30 minutes in, Vitality knocking on these tier 2 towers. And you have to think they'll break the base open with this Baron buff. Still 2 minutes left on it. Already got 3,500, 4,000 gold from it. And they take this mid lane tower next. Misfits, do you just pull the trigger? Do you wait until the minions are pushing in? Because there's double cannon in the bottom wave and there's a single cannon in the mid, and Attila with that rapid fire cannon can get some free shots in. Saken stepping forward, using his shield to get some extra damage down. The mid lane tower down to about half as well. Bot lane on a third. Mowgli jumped in on here. Gorilla trying to catch him up, but didn't want to use the ultimate. Now Vitality just reset. Wait for the next wave. You can push in just a second. Saken there. 10% HP on the tower. Saken will just let the minions do the work. 3 cannons, everything you need in that bottom lane. And now he can wait for this mid lane wave to push. Misfits have to answer and then push back towards that tower, that inhibitor if he wants. Vitality instead will just take the mid lane inhibitor. And they have totally broken the base of Misfits. Maybe broken the hopes of Misfits in this game as well.
Calm, patient play from Vitality. They don't need to force anything right now. They have the Baron. They have the minions, they have the pressure. They even have top wave slowly pushing towards Misfits base. Misfits, they're gonna have to rely on some crazy wombo combo, but that's gonna have to come off the back of Gorilla. If he can find that engage, maybe they can turn this around, but here we go.
Here we go. Jactroll gobbles up Saken. Gorilla jumping onto that backline, but Captain locks him in. 4-man charm, though. It's Febiven there with the shot game. Not quite. Unable to get in position in time, and already Cabochard's going on a killing spree. Mowgli forced out towards the bottom side. The Realm Warp comes in. It takes 2 onto the backline, and Maxlore low. Febiven chased out as well. Summer chased out by 3 players from Vitality. He's in the midst of them all, but he's done. And Vitality just sweep away Misfits in their own base. Clean as you like. Vitality are going to end this game in a heartbeat.
Good stuff there from Vitality. 4 members of Misfits are dead.
And Vitality now 9-4. They've hit the magic number. They're pretty much guaranteed that playoff spot.
Definitely on track. Good stuff from Saken in his debut game. You can see the smiling faces coming out from the Vitality players. He's got to be happy. Not only did he play the famous Ryze from Jizuke, the staple pick for Vitality, but he had a fantastic performance on it as well. Laning phase didn't go the way he wanted. He definitely fell behind, but he kept going to the side lane. He kept sticking to his guns, and he made it work.
1, 2, 3, 4. Definitely did. Great stuff from the rookie on the stage. one that will be up and coming for many years to come, I am sure. Misfits, on the other hand, just never really got going. Never really got their game plan going. We said that you wanted to get ahead in the early game with the Rek'Sai. Can't remember seeing a successful Maxlore or gank, really, apart from that flash in the top lane.
I mean, there was that one poor play that I think came from Vitality more so, where they tried to force a fight towards the top side of the map against a numbers advantage from Misfits. That could have been the window, but again, we just didn't see enough forcing. It was one of those situations where, because how far behind they fell in the top lane, meant that it was really difficult. The fact that the outer towers were up for so long. Yeah, I think the Urgot pick personally was not the best one.
Suboptimal.
Yeah, I think they could have saved it for counter. Instead, they just saved the Rakan for the very last pick. Yeah, and I don't think the draft helped Misfits, but ultimately you can't take anything away from the fact that we saw a strong early game from Vitality.
Yeah.
They played the side lanes very well. I think they took a couple of risky Barons, which could have ended in disaster, but they also had a good enough awareness to know, okay, we can't actually commit to this. And, you know, we talked a little bit about it when the Baron happened. They kind of had to force it to get the TP out from the Urgot as well. So I think it got a little messy in the mid game, but ultimately it resulted in good 1-3-1 from Vitality. And once they got the Baron, they cleaned up the game very, very easily.
And I think, as much as, you know, it's disheartening for Misfits to lose this, especially since SK just lost, so you really want that extra win. They have got they've got good head-to-heads against most of the teams around them, and their schedule, they've still got XL to play. I mean, they've got Splice, they've got Shout. It's not the easiest schedule, but they should be able to eke out a couple of wins.
This is one of those games where if you'd won, it's only good news, but this probably isn't the most important game that you have to win.
It's not the end of their playoff dreams.
Yes, they're going up against Fnatic, I think, next week, and I think that's the game that they have to win. Otherwise, their playoff chances definitely take a hit.
And definitely do. Well, we're going to see what Vitality's mid laner has to say after taking down Misfits.
Thank you very much, guys, and thank you, Saken, for joining me. Taking down Misfits, taking down Febiven in the mid lane. How special was it for you to play on the LEC stage for the first time?
It was insane, actually. Like, it's a dream for me, so it's really insane. Febiven is one of the biggest mid laner in the world, so yeah, it was really good to play against him.
I know you've been used to play in the EU Masters last year, in the LFL this year, which is an online competition. How different is it to play on stage versus in the LFL?
It's way more... I mean, the level is way higher, actually, so... I mean, I was nervous and shit, so... But yeah, it's just so good, actually. You were nervous, but you did so good. I mean, having to fill Jizuke's shoes must have been hard for you, right? Yeah, actually, I was like so nervous at the beginning because Jizuke, I admire Jizuke so much, so he's just so good. And yeah, just playing with his teammates, and it's just good, actually. And yeah, like... On the background, actually, we can see you smurfing on the bot lane with the Rek'Sai trying to gank you. That was a really good action from you. Is there anything you would like to say to the French fans watching you right now? Because everybody was waiting for this interview at home. Thank you. I received a lot of messages, and thank you all. And merci à vous. And thank you for joining me, Saken. We're going to take a short break, and we will be back in 4.5.
Well, thank you very much, Laure. Now, me and Frosk are here to break down sort of a volatile early game here, and I think it comes down to how these junglers played around the top side of the map. You can see from this play initially, it actually goes very well for Maxlore coming in for the gank to try to burn the flash while holding on to his own. Yeah, and the thing is Maxlore here is just on time. They managed to burn Cabo's gank, and the key thing is if you press stop right here, count the minions. You've got an extra caster creep, which means at this point, not only have they burned Cabo's flash, but the wave is actually going to push into Misfits' side. It's coming on in right there, and here's where I think Maxlore has a decision. Now, in his mind, he doesn't know exactly where Mowgli is on the map. Right now, Mowgli's rekilling on his Krugs, so he doesn't walk down here into the river. What I want to see him do is sit in this brush, because look at this. I mean, Cabochard has no HP, no mana, no flash. He's gonna have to base and TP back in. That is, of course, unless Maxlore walks away here and lets him reapproach the wave. Yeah, so by allowing Cabochard to reapproach the wave, it not only cancels sOAZ's back, so he's actually late to the TP, but it also means that Cabo not gets a full reset on the wave, but make sure that it's more evened out while Mowgli is actually running top lane. Exactly. You can sort of see down here on the map as well that Jarvan has recalled, has pathed immediately back up here, and Maxlore is actually going to get forced out of the jungle, out of the river. He's going to end up pathing back down, and this puts sOAZ in a really uncomfortable position. The wave is going into his tower. After a poor trade in lane, he's now relatively low on HP, and there was an earlier pink ward right there in the brush rush that Cabochard was able to place. This sets up for a great gank for Mowgli.
And the thing is at this point, it's now a level disadvantage between the 2v2 top of Cabochard and Mowgli versus Maxlore and sOAZ. So Maxlore says, see ya, buddy. I'm going to go to the side of the map where I do have priority. He farms bot side. And sOAZ picks a very unfortunate time to look for a safe ward gank, which allows Mowgli to punish him.
Exactly. And I think this is what we see when we talk about Vitality all the time. It's how they are so good at playing around the top side of the map and around punishing. And that's exactly what they do, because now Mowgli, just a few minutes later, returns towards this top lane and gets the ball rolling once again.
And it's pretty much free at this point. sOAZ knows that he can't compete with the Sylas. He's getting punished in a lot of these trades, despite the fact that he's got the executioner's calling and he's trying to survive. So I do think that what Misfits do from this point is quite creative, which they say, okay, this is lost. We need to break this map, and they throw everything in the kitchen sink topside.
Exactly, and that's what's going to come up next here, because of course, if you can't win the top lane 1v1 or 2v2, why not go for the whole on 5v5? Misfits actually set up this play very nicely. You see, there they have the numbers advantage initially coming in towards this play, and it's actually really interesting how this fight sort of played out here, because Maxlore was so close to just definitively knocking out Mowgli and winning this fight, but it led to this sort of mid-game that was very indecisive as to which team actually had the advantage.
And I know you and I had some questions around the Rakan pick specifically, but after seeing this performance from Gorilla, love the pick, and I love the sustained CC to allow Hansama to really have so much control in the fight because of how long Rakan could lock down the opponents.
Yeah, well, the draft is interesting, the game was interesting, but after the break, Amazing and Quickshot will look at Jankos' signature pick. And I'll give you a hint, it's not Karthus. Find out which champion I'm talking about when we return.
sOAZ constantly being pushed.
Ooh, flash in from Mowgli, gets the knockup. Cabochard with the chase, has the ultimate. Fear on death will pull it back. On the chase, Maxlore gets the knockup, but Saken just trading. Winning the 2v1 at the moment. The Abyss of Voyage comes in as well from Jactroll. There's the redemption, and Saken, he's pulling his best Jizuke face on. 2,000 HP left on the Baron. He's going to get taken. The shotgun comes out with big great, and Attila flashes across the wall for the kill. Mowgli forced out towards the bottom side. The realm warp comes in. It takes 2 onto the back line, and Maxlore low. Febiven chased out as well. Hansama chased out by 3 players from Vitality. And Vitality now 9 and 4.